Just before we start,
Sure.
what was the funding solution you recommended?
So it's an organization called the Resilience Fund.
Resilience Fund. Right.
Yep. Um, I've already done an application and in for our pub and for our rugby club. So I'd be more than happy to help you complete an application. The first stage is £2,500 grant funded energy audit. And you may have already had one done that might qualify, but they tend to like to do their own.
I've just managed to get a deck certificate for the building.
hmm
I haven't actually seen it yet. Would that suffice?
I don't know without asking them, but I can help with the process.
Okay.
And then beyond that, there's 40% grant and 60% kind of friendly loan for
Yeah.
potentially up to six figures, depending on the cost of a system. For those that are just kind of hearing the conversation, we're talking about renewable energy installation for a town hall where Stuart's a councillor in Great Dunmow.
Right.
So I'd be
Yeah.
happy.
I've got a system specification, as I told you. Just getting a structural survey done, and hopefully then we can go out and uh, get a
Yeah,
few tenders and get somebody to fit it. I've
yeah,
got a meeting with Holden in a couple of hours,
great.
but I just wanted the name of the fund that you were thinking of
Yes. Yeah, I'll
before.
ping I'll ping you a link before you meet so you
Thank you.
can have a look, and I'd be really happy to help with the like I say help with the process.
Excellent. That'd be great. Thank you.
Hi there, Isaac.
Hi, sorry about that. Was desperately searching for the link because it came through the Zoom email, and what I had done is managed to delete that email.
Sure. Well, not a problem. We normally give it 5 minutes or so to wait for people to arrive. So
Mm.
um, while we are waiting, just for everyone's information, this meeting is being recorded. A transcription, I believe an AI transcription, and a copy of the recording will be put on the Great Collaboration knowledge base. For those that haven't yet, perhaps if you could maybe change your name, just let us know where you're from. That would be great. Um, and we'll give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone else arrives. And I'm your replacement host for today. Graham is uncontactable somewhere, I believe in the Outer Hebrides, on adventures, probably on a sailing boat, knowing Graham. So you'll have to make do with me for the time being.
Okay.
But we've got a good spread around the country from Warwickshire, Shropshire. I'm in Suffolk in East Anglia. Um, I'm not really sure where Blackbird Leys is, David, or indeed Kingsthorpe, Ellen Ed. Might just tell you.
It's inside Oxford.
Yeah,
Okay, Oxfordshire, yeah, and
and Kingthorpe's in Northampton.
Northampton. Great. We've definitely got a good spread. So
Yes, it's actually inside the city of Oxford.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear you're doing great things down there in Oxford. So fabulous. And so Isaac is joining us today, who's the partnership director for Climate Emergency UK, who are very helpfully grading our respective local authorities in terms of their climate action. And from probably around 2018, I think maybe was the first climate emergency declaration. And then from 2019 onwards, it became a more common thing. And I believe up to 80 90% of our local authorities have probably declared a climate emergency. Our Parliament has declared a climate emergency, but that was via private members' bill tabled by the opposition at the time in 2019. So while our Parliament was one of the first in the world, or probably the first in the world, to declare a climate emergency, it's distinct and different from our government of the time. So it wasn't our executive and it wasn't our government that declared a climate emergency. Having declared climate emergencies throughout the country, There's varying degrees of action. And while we wait just another couple of minutes, see if anyone else turns up, I'll give you a good example of that. I think in 2010, Newcastle City Council wrote their climate emergency plan. And then the build up to the mayoral election, where I was on the campaign team for a Metro Mayor, I inquired with the City Council what progress they might have made, and the election was in 2019, what progress they might have made on their climate plan. And the responsible cabinet member said, "That's a good question, I'll go and find out." And when they came back to me to say what progress they'd made since 2010, the answer was, we've made the officer responsible redundant. We haven't got any visibility on any progress that has been made, so we can't actually answer your question. And that was over a period of 9 years from having written a plan. So I'm very delighted with the work, see the excellent work that Climate Emergency UK are doing, helping us keep track of progress or otherwise with our local authorities. And we've got a few other people just joined, so for those that haven't yet, perhaps just add the parish council or area that you might be representing of the organisation. And then without further ado, I'll hand over to Isaac to tell us more about the fabulous work at Climate Emergency.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having us here. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone, and we're doing lots of different engagement events across the UK and going to different conferences and being our speaker. But we really appreciate this opportunity, so thank you for having us and for listening as well. So I'm going to cover a little bit, obviously, about the scorecards, the results, kind of the average scores and kind of the trends that we've seen, and obviously a little bit of a background to the project and background to Climate Emergency UK, as well as some of the things that you can do going forward in terms of supporting and like further analysis that we're going to be doing as well. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this all works okay. You can see my screen okay, and I'm not yeah, perfect. And I'm not showing, you can just see the slides, right? I'm not showing the presenter view. Perfect, thank you. Always good to get confirmation. If you have my email address on the slides there, obviously I have them at the end as well, but please make use if you ever want to reach out to us on either to the generic Climate Emergency UK declare or my specific email address. Just in terms of who we are, and this is kind of our theory of change, or our most important kind of core values, is that we believe it's data which we provide through things like the scorecards and you know, compiling all the climate emergency declarations, and public accountability, which is what's going to lead to more action. We don't just think that if we get some data published, that's going to change anything and change hearts and minds or get more action at council level. But we also think if you combine decent data, good data, alongside public accountability, so that's with local residents and parish councillors like yourselves pushing councils to go further, then that's what's going to lead to more action. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Who we are and what we've done, it's already kind of been mentioned a little bit, but it's kind of, this is like a short timeline or photos of images of what we've done. We were set up and to compile and encourage councils to declare climate emergency declarations. That's the map on the left-hand side here. And yes, it is about 83% of councils have declared a climate emergency. A bit of a higher percentage, I think it's 85%, have a climate action plan that's in date, although and also have set net zero targets. We then worked with My Society to create the Climate Action Plan Explorer, and that's the database of all UK councils' climate action plans and the net zero targets and what's happening, like the initial burst. And that led us to, you know, that we're creating a data set so that people can hold their councils to account more, because they can understand what their climate action plan and their net zero targets are, and therefore move on. So that was our first iterations of it. What we then did is we went on to assess the council climate plans, which we released in January 2022. And then we released the action scorecard. So the first iteration of the action scorecards were released in October 2023. the most recent action scorecards were released in just a few weeks ago, or basically 1 month ago, in the middle of June 2025, so 17th of June. So all the data is really fresh and really new, and I'll give a little website demonstration later in terms of how you can use the website and understand it. It's important to know that the methodology has been tweaked between 2023 and 2025 scorecards, and that's mostly because obviously we learned so much from going through the process the first time, but we made sure to limit the number of changes we made to the methodology because we wanted the results to be comparable. And that's really important, obviously, to be able to compare between years so you can actually track council climate action over time. Our objectives of the actual project: we want to support greater transparency between local government and residents. We want to enable campaigners to hold their council to account. We want to provide a benchmark for council climate action and help with the sharing of best practice. And we want the scorecards kind of we believe the scorecards provide the evidence for that there should be a legal duty for local government to act on climate action and why that is needed. And these objectives kind of tie in with who we think our audience is. So obviously local residents and campaigners, but also councils being a big part of our evidence, our audience, sorry, base, and using the scorecards, how they use the scorecards as almost like a best practice tool to find those that are scoring really well, and if they can then take some of those actions and learn from those councils that score well. I'm just gonna, okay, so everyone else's sound is okay. Okay, cool. Just checking the chat. This is a little bit about our timeline. And how the Scorecards project actually works. And I will go into a bit more detail on this. So we reviewed the methodology in the start of 2024, and I will talk a little bit about how we reviewed that methodology. So we have an advisory group that oversees the creation of the scorecards, and the advisory group represents the council climate sector. So that includes councillors, it includes officers, campaigners and residents, and also sector experts. So people from other sector organisations that understand and work on local climate policy. So they oversee every new question and all the changes that were made. We also held roundtables over the course of 2024. So the roundtables were with, again, we invited officers, councillors, former volunteers, local campaigners to discuss each individual section and what we were going to do in terms of any changes we were going to make or clarifications we can make to make the scoring clearer. So that's what we did in the early part of 2024, was review and then publish the updated metrics. We then have, and this is like something that's special of the scorecards and is the same for every single scorecards. We have a 3-stage marking process. We have a first mark, we have a right of reply, and then we have an audit. The first mark, and this is something that's really special about the scorecards, is that the scorecards are a citizen data project. And that's where most people get involved in the first mark. So over 200 people volunteered with us to basically crowdsource all the data and information on council climate action. So we train those volunteers, we work with those volunteers in terms of guides and online to answer any questions they may have, and they go out and basically crowdsource all the data and information for roughly 2/3 of the questions. We had about another 40 volunteers who helped us process all of the freedom of information requests that we send out to councils. So that's another way we get data, is through freedom of information requests. And obviously sending about 10 questions to councils via FOI means we get quite a lot of responses, and therefore we used volunteers to process all that information that we got from freedom of information requests. So that's the first mark. And that's, you can basically think of that as the big crowdsource of all the information and data. We then have a right of reply period, and that's where we actually engage with councils. So we send councils the first mark information and to the council climate officers, and they're able to log in to the platform and able to challenge and provide any feedback or information that we may have missed. So they're able to go, yeah, as I said, they're able to go in and provide any data that we may have missed, you know, if there's reports we may have missed because they were hidden away in meeting minutes, or if the information is really new because they've only just released it and we weren't able to find the web page. And they're able to provide that information and provide any challenge and feedback and extra information in the right of reply. We have a really big engagement rate, which we're really grateful for from councils. So 76% of all UK councils actually responded in the right of reply. So to have just over 3/4 of UK councils actually respond is really amazing to get that kind of engagement. So that's really we think, yeah, we're really pleased with that and that level of engagement. The third stage is the scoring audit. And the scoring audit is where we have paid staff and a few trained volunteers come back and actually award the final marks. And what the scoring audit does is it takes into account everything from the first mark, it takes into account all the information provided by the council in the right of reply, and then we award the final marks in the scoring audit. So, and the audit is there to basically increase the accuracy and consistency of the marking, because we know that with that large amount of people in the first mark, there's going to be like errors and inconsistencies and inaccuracies in the marking. With the extra information provided by the council, the scoring auditors are there to they're already experienced. We train them again. We work with them much closer because it's a much smaller team. And as I mentioned, we have paid auditors for the first time as well. And that makes sure that we're as consistent and accurate as possible in the data. And then we go into the launch periods where we basically work on the media angles and some final data checks and yeah, launch the scorecards. Managed to click on something else on my laptop. The thing that we're really also, I think, especially about the scorecards is our methodology. We don't just cover the high emitting areas like transport and buildings. We also cover, or we try to cover, every single function of the local authority. And that's something that's really important, is that the scorecards are a response, a whole council response to the climate emergency. So it's not just looking at, you know, what the council is doing in transport or what they're doing in buildings, but it's looking at what the council, or how the council is embedding climate in their governance structures. You know, whether they're taking climate into account in all their decision making, what they're doing in their planning policies, what they're doing around nature and biodiversity, and how they're collaborating with different like schools or businesses or health institutions or cultural institutions to like promote and you know, push forward local climate action. So that's another thing that we think the scorecards really do well, is we try and capture it's a whole council response rather than just an individual team or officers like response to the climate emergency. Cool. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the results and kind of give an overview of what the results are. So the results from 2025 are there's 66 UK councils that score 50% or higher in the scorecards. And there's some councils, so 56 councils are able to score over 80% in at least one section. Yeah, so I will explain that, Amanda. That's a good question. I will come back to that before I give the demo. So yeah, 66 councils that score 50% or higher. There's 56 councils that are able to score over 80% in some section. And we split out councils, and yeah, this is principal councils, by the different council types. So single tier, which includes unitaries, London boroughs, metropolitan districts, and Scottish and Welsh authorities. And you can see the average score there and the range of scores. So there are some councils that score quite low, just over 10%, and there's some councils that score quite high, just over 70%. And then you've got district councils, counties, Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland districts are quite unique in their powers in terms they have less and less funding. And then we have the mayoral authorities as well. And you should think about the mayoral authorities as a bit more distinct in the scorecards, because they do have quite a separate methodology due to the very, very different powers and due to them being very new as well. And so, yeah, the average scores are there. And as you can see, as I said, some score low and some score high. But the average scores are around 35 to 40% for most authorities. What has changed since 2023? So this is really important. On average, scores have increased by 6%. So the average score in the scorecards this year was 38%, whereas in 2023 it was 32%. There are 25 more UK councils scoring 50% or higher. So that's shows that there's more councils scoring highly in the scorecards, obviously. And that equates to about 8% of councils, 25. There's 20 more councils scoring over 80% or higher in at least one section. So again, it shows that there are more councils that are taking more best practice climate action. And importantly, there's 33 fewer councils scoring 20% or less. But to add this on, all the councils that score 20% or less are councils in England or Northern Ireland, areas where Northern Ireland's just got a statutory duty on climate that came in through their Environment Act, but England has no legal duty to act on climate change or reduce emissions. And you can see the average scores between the different council types here, with the average increase being around 6%, with most different council types roughly being around a 6% increase. And I am going to do a website demo now, and I will answer your question. Yes, it is just focused on the principal authorities and the main authorities. And yeah, we include Scottish authorities within the single tier councils. So when you come onto the website, councilclimatescorecards.uk, I'll just put that in the chat here. You are greeted by this nation here, and you can browse by nation. So nation specific information is found on these pages, and you can see all the Scottish councils together. And we're going to do further analysis coming soon, so you can just see all the Scottish councils listed. We then have our section pages. So if you want to look at a particular section, you can just click on here and you can go through and be like, oh, I'm really interested in planning. And you can understand what the average score is, what the how many councils got a mark on that particular question, what the questions are. And then you can actually visit that question as well to understand like what councils scored well in each of these questions. So how many councils do now have net zero as a strategic objective of their local plans? So that's increased by 24 councils. So they scored higher, and you can see which councils scored higher, and then you can see which there's also councils scored lower as well, and you can show those councils that scored higher compared to last time, and which councils scored lower compared to last time as well. So I know I'm going through this a bit quickly, sorry, but you can obviously just play around on the website and find this out yourself, go through it. So back to the home page, something that's really important, as well as the browsing by nation or going to a particular section if you're interested, you can obviously find your council. So my hometown council where I was born was Luton. So if you search Luton in this council thing here, it will bring it down to Luton Borough Council. And really importantly is you can browse the scores here in terms of all the different scores within all of the different sections. So you can see where they've improved or where they've decreased their score. And then you can, oh, excuse me, I've accidentally gone backwards. And then you can also click through to the council as well. So the Blue Peter demonstration is not going as smooth as I'd like, but here you go. You can also click through to the council as well. So when you click through, and it's just loading, you can understand a bit more about that council themselves, obviously what nation they're in, how deprived the community is, the index of multiple deprivation, their net zero target date for their area, their total population, their political control, and the urban ruralness of that council. And then you can go down and understand click by click where they've scored well, where they haven't, and why. And then where they've scored well, where they haven't, and where they've improved as well. So you can go through about all the different information. And I will explain a little bit here. The other thing I just wanted to show you is that when you go through and click through to a council, you can also compare by different types of councils. So that you see this list of similar councils here, which is a list of similar councils brought by My Society. And you can click here and like add a council to list to see like where this council, so Enfield, has done better or worse than Luton. So obviously they're doing better in transport and planning, but they're not doing as well in buildings and heatings. And again, when you click through, you can then see how the scores line up side by side and understand that. And then you can add a few more councils as well. And And then, yeah, you can also filter by different types of question. What I'm going to highlight to you here is if you want to understand more about the questions, you can just click here, how is this marked? And you can see it's been marked by volunteer research. So that's one of our volunteer research questions. You can understand the weighting of that question, so how much effect it has on the overall scores. And then you can understand the evidence that we've got for that particular question, and how we've been able to assess it and what evidence has been provided. So that's why they would have got the mark, and you can see the evidence links for that particular question. If you want to know more about the criteria for that question, you just click view criteria and it comes up with what the criteria is for that question. And then you can also click through to see the full methodology on the methodology page as well. And oh, click the wrong thing. And then just to show you, you know, if you see here, the source of that information is FOI. So then you know that we've asked this question via FOI, and because they didn't meet the criteria, it says things like the evidence doesn't meet criteria for that particular question. And where they do meet the criteria, you'll see the link to the FOI that we were able to send out, which you should click on, and it should work, and it does work. Good demonstration here. And then you can scroll through and see the information that Luton sent us in terms of their EPC ratings of councils. So you can see here, the energy efficiency rating of the council homes was 70% were EPC C or above, so 5,000 out of 7,000 properties. And how many, whether they were also conducting investigations for minimum energy efficiency standards as well. So hopefully it's all like really transparent for you to go through and understand why council did score or didn't score, met our criteria or not. And as I said, you can compare councils to similar councils, or you can just add in someone else as well that's like completely random because you're interested. Yeah, that's a very brief demonstration of the website. And I want to get through some questions. So yeah, we'll open it up to questions in a second. I'm just going to go back because I've got a few more slides that I want to cover very briefly, which is we do have this document on 15 ways to improve. And again, this is more based on if you're a principal council, but I have looked at some of these things are relevant to parish councils as well, because I was doing some research on the kind of statutory powers or different things that as parish councils you might have powers on. So just sharing in there the 15 ways to improve your council climate action, and that's our document that you can find online as well. So obviously some of these things are relevant to parish councils, making sure information on climate action is publicly accessible, having a climate action plan with smart targets, making sure your residents and stakeholders are involved, making sure any buildings that you take care of are using renewable energy, but also obviously maybe installing renewable energy on those buildings, making sure climate impacts are taken in, and the impact of climate is taken into account for all decision making. If you can, having some kind of training for staff and councillors, like carbon literacy, but we know councils also do in-house schemes. There could actually be a really nice pair up between parish councils and their principal authorities, in the fact that councils often have their own climate awareness training that they do in-house, and maybe that's something that actually parish councils could work with those unitary or district or county authorities to actually take that climate awareness training as well, because that's something that could be expanded across those areas, which would be good. You know, supporting community energy or helping residents procure community energy, making sure that any vehicle fleets are electric, and setting up car sharing schemes that are ideally electric as well. And dimming lighting, I know that dimming lighting and mowing less are more things that parish councils can actively do, because if you're running like things like churchyards, or if there's certain areas, village greens or parks that you're looking after, especially with the way devolution's going, those community and parish councils may have more powers to look after local parks. And so yeah, things like mowing less, stopping the use of pesticides, and dimming lighting in those areas can really help nature improve, and obviously in some regards as well help draw down emissions. The other thing, I know you don't have any power over net zero homes policy, but parish councils one of the people who are consulted on new developments. And so, you know, making sure that new developments that come forward are being built to a high standard, and they are being built net zero and electric first, in the points of using heat pumps or solar panels on. I mean, we know that solar panels are going to come forward on all new developments because of the government national, but making sure that actually happens in practice. Making sure that, you know, it's heat pump first for new homes in your area when you get consulted on these new developments. I think that's something that parish councils can really actively hold their principal authorities and planning authorities to account on this, because you are consulted on new developments, and that should be something that you are raising and saying, actually, this is important. Is the development going to be net zero? Is it going to be, you know, just powered by electric, or are we going to be using fossil fuels like gas, which will lock in emissions and, you know, expensive retrofits? We also going to do further analysis. So we have, if you're interested, obviously, and again, all of our sessions are related to principal authorities in the main, and I will explain just very briefly at the end why we focus on you know, district or councils or unitaries more. But if you're interested in particular in planning best practice, we have our first scorecards and action session. So we'll have presentations from Wiltshire and Lancaster City Council on their planning policies that are being brought forward. It's a free event to attend. It's basically a best practice event going forward. So if you're interested, I've just put the link in the chat. We will also provide in the near future more analysis on the scorecards. So you saw that little tag there saying infographics coming soon. We produced infographics which were like top line data on how councils across the UK are performing in governance or planning. And we released that information over the course. We will release that information for the 2025 scorecards in September, October time. So do keep a lookout. So there will be further analysis that will be provided. And one way you can support Climate UK, you can obviously buy the data. All the data is there online, publicly available. But if you're interested, you can purchase the data for individual councils or for all UK councils in a spreadsheet format. It's just the information that is on the website, but it's in a downloadable format if you want to go through it and tie it together with any other data sets. That's the only thing that we charge for. And if you like our work, we currently have a crowdfunder open at the moment. It's match funded, so all donations are doubled. And so I will just put a link in the chat. So if you're interested, you can donate. That's the end of my presentation. And I will very briefly, and I should have done this at the start because that's what I meant to do, touch on. We do only assess and compile information on principal authorities, and that is because there are thousands of parish councils, and we already do lots of work on, and it's already a big job for us to cover the roughly 400 authorities there are in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And so, you know, we do understand that parish councils also play a role and can be really significant, especially with devolution, pushing things up to bigger unitary authorities. That parish councils and neighbourhood councils, as they've been named in the devolution bill, may become more significant in terms of their local action, but we're not able to properly assess them because of how many there are and how different they are and how they vary. So we will stay focused on principal authorities for the time going forward, but obviously there are things that can be taken from the action that principal authorities are taking and distilled down to parish level as well. And we do know of really good examples of parish councils that are taking action, like Frome Town Council, which has kind of been a leader in this space. Yeah. That's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I wanted to give enough time for there to be questions. So happy to stay here and answer any questions on the scorecards, on methodology and anything else.
Wow, thanks so much, Isaac. That's really fascinating. And I mean, I've been following the journey of Climate Emergency UK. I think Kevin Freer was instrumental in setting up, and Kevin and I are old colleagues. So really interesting to see the progress being made and where you're at now. That's absolutely fascinating, and ideas and inspiration on how we can hold our principal authorities to account and maybe lobby for change. As for great collaboration, we've got some facilities to allow to allow community groups and town and parish councils to sort of enter pledges and show what they're doing. So moving forward, I appreciate it's a lot of work that those 10,000 town and parish councils around the UK, we might be able to monitor our respective progress. I'm particularly fascinated by the we're getting a bit of noise from somewhere. I'm wondering if somebody might mute. I'm not quite sure where it's coming from.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm particularly interested in. I also run an organisation called Community Climate Action, so the getting residents involved a bit. But before we perhaps discuss that, let's open the floor to some questions. I think Katie, you were first.
Thank you. So, is it right that this is the second time this has been done, and is it a 2-year process? I think you said it's 2023. So I'm just wondering, it's just come out in 17th of June, and then when will the next one be done? I'm kind of interested in the timelines that you work towards.
For sure. Yes, it is. It's been roughly. We launched in October 2023, and we launched this second iteration in June 2025. So yes, it is a almost 2-year process that we've been doing, and the next scorecards will come out in 2027. We're unsure when we would do them in 2027 because devolution throws quite a big spanner in the works with lots of authorities being created or disappearing. So we're going to get some feedback from different people across the sector to understand whether we should do it earlier in 2027 so we can capture the authorities before they disappear, or we should do it later in 2027 and just not include the new authorities that have been created. Basically, we're not able to include the new authorities just because the information is not publicly accessible, and any new authorities that are created in the round of the scorecards. So in 2023, that was like Somerset. We weren't able to include just because they've just literally got created in May. I know from constituent councils, but their websites and stuff just aren't set up, and we're not able to assess them properly. So they are assessed in the next round of the scorecards. But yeah, it'll be in 2027, but unsure when in 2027, given when we should do it around the devolution timetables. Which, knowing how things like that, big policies like that work in government, will likely be thrown off kilter and get delayed anyway. So maybe it's fine, and we'll be able to just do it in middle of 2027, which will work for us. But yeah,
that's great, thank you. And do you always kind of consult with the council? I have to check with my colleagues, but I haven't been made aware of consultation taking place with like my kind of climate colleagues. So, and I know that one of the only criticism I've heard of like the climate scorecards approach, like from chatting to different people, is that sometimes I've heard them say, oh, it doesn't feel very fair because it's just like information gleaned from the website, and the website isn't always the most accurate source of information. And so it was really nice to hear you talk about those 3-stage approaches and that chance to kind of feedback and challenge. So, because I didn't realize that happened at all. But yeah, just wondering, is that definitely happens for every council, or is that
so yes, we invite all councils, and we make sure to email the council officer contact that we have, which unfortunately is not always the most up-to-date contact because staff leave and there's turnover. But we always email a council officer, and then we also always email the like climate lead that's been designated, so like the political lead, just in case that we've not got the right officer contact, and we ask people to forward it on. So yes, that every council is invited to take part in the right of reply, and then we hold briefings and various so we held a pre-launch briefing to let councils know what the average scores were and kind of how people had generally gone across the UK, and we had like 280 people sign up for that, with 180 people attending, and that was just councils. So it's roughly just over a third of UK councils came to our pre-launch briefing, with more watching the recording. So we do a really, really good engagement with councils, and they're able to get involved in that right of reply. And then what we tend to do in terms of the consultation around the methodology is we have councils represented on our advisory group, so that oversees kind of the scorecards governance. So they oversee the questions, but also things like when should we run the right of reply? Is it going to be difficult for you if we do it in November? Because I don't know, lots of councils do X in November, and what we found was it just varies per council. But we also then invited both high scoring and low scoring councils to give feedback on the methodology for each section for when we were doing the methodology review, and as I said, we invite both high scoring and low scoring councils to give feedback to us. So yeah, we're always trying to get feedback from councils on the scorecards methodology and the process.
That's great. Is it? I might email you separately and just check who your contact is, because I'd be interested to know and just be able to follow up with them.
No worries.
Just in case it did get lost. But no, it all sounds great. Really
Thanks,
happy
Katie.
to hear. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Katie. And I'm not quite sure which order, but let's go David and then Gary. So David.
Right. Obviously, the thing I first did was look up my area.
Good.
Blackbird Leys Parish Council is an officially deprived area inside the city of Oxford, inside Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
So I looked up county councillor, and right at the top is Oxfordshire County Council, but Oxford is only third in the list. And I happen to know a bit about how Oxfordshire got there, because for 4 years, the cabinet member for climate change was a Green Party representative.
Yeah.
And he was saying right now, when he was leaving, officers in completely unrelated departments would start their analysis with donut economics. So it had penetrated so much. And I was wondering how you tried to find out how thinking and working on climate change got actually embedded into the councils you were studying.
Yeah. That's a really good question. Thanks, David. Yes. So I've got Oxford's scorecard thing up. So just to help you go through, just to help me go through some of the questions. Sorry, not you. So in our governance section, that is kind of what we're assessing in terms of how embedded it is across all of the council as itself. So, and to answer Katie's question, absolutely, we understand that there's sometimes projects going on in the background, but we do for the volunteer research questions only assess publicly accessible information, and that's because if it's not publicly accessible, how are residents going to know about it? And one of the kind of impacts of the scorecards has been, we hope, and we know this from individual stories of councils, but it'd be interesting to do analysis across all of them, but making climate more prevalent on the website. Partly councils do that because they know they're going to be assessed by us, and so therefore we can find it. But it also means that if we can find it easily, then residents can as well. And so we think that's a real benefit, because then residents can be like, what is my council doing? Oh, and it's not just climate campaigners that are viewing their council website, it's also people that aren't campaigning directly at the local level, and having something prominent there and what your council is doing on climate action just reminds those people that actually local government is taking action and doing stuff. So that's something that we think is kind of like a byproduct, I guess, of the scorecards happening, is that information that we've seen has generally become more accessible. So that's good. But in terms of the governance section, so we look at things like if the council's corporate plan includes their area-wide net zero target and makes it one of their main priorities. So that's is it a corporate priority? Is the net zero target included? We look at things like, does the medium-term financial plan, which is kind of their forecast budget on how they're going to spend, include the net zero target and make climate actually one of its main priorities? And then things like that in the governance section. So the other way is we look at the corporate risk register, and this isn't on whether they're reducing emissions, but is sometimes included. But does the council's corporate risk register identify the impacts of climate change to the local area, and then obviously what action is going to be taken? And I think that's one of the good identifiers of the council is embedding it across their whole area, is because the corporate risk register is taken up by the audit committee, and there's a very, very different set of councillors than if there's a climate committee or climate lead, but the audit committee is a very different kind of committee. And if there's climate impacts and action being discussed there. I think that's something that's really important. And then, yes, we have this question on, has the council adopted a new governance or decision-making process to put climate at the heart of that every council made? And we have this as a 2-tier criteria. The first tier criteria is quite simple. Councils, you know, just putting the climate implications are listed on council decisions during those meetings, the council meetings, but we know that can be a bit of a tick box exercise. And so we have this kind of second tier criteria that if they're using like a detailed impact assessment tool, something like donut economics or their own kind of example of their own kind of decision-making wheels or whatever kind of language they use to basically use that. One of the best councils, or one of the first councils to do this was Chesterfield. I'm going to do a live demonstration. This might not work because it might not come up to the right page. Yeah, so I'm actually going to use cat external resource. Oh, not found. Okay, well, don't do live demonstrations during presentations. But if you go on our Scorecards website, even Chesterfield have a climate decision-making tool, and if you find them, you can hopefully link okay to the website. If I go down to them here, and if I go to their governance section, and I'm hoping the link works. So how is this marked? Yeah, perfect. Climate change. No, 404. There we go. Okay, we did find evidence of them using the climate change impact assessment tool. It will be somewhere on the website, but we've just got it wrong. We've just it might have been moved. But yes, the way they use it in their public reports is through listing the climate impacts and implications. So if I hopefully search here, you can kind of see here it is. Here it is. The climate change impact assessment, so we have got an appropriate link, is listed for this particular decision, and they've done basically like similar donut economic kind of model, but for every decision, whether it affects like transport emissions, goods and services, whether it creates more waste. And you can see here that overall it's kind of had it's kind of helped reduce emissions in goods and services, but created more waste, and therefore emissions have kind of stayed neutral. But obviously they would be looking to try and reduce waste. And so they do that for every single one of their decisions. The demonstration.
Can you put that link in the chat, please? That'd be really helpful.
Well, you can just look online. If you go visit this question, I'll do this. You can just find it all in this particular question, which council scored the highest marks, and then you can just see the different decision-making wheels or whatever they're doing. So yeah, you can just view it all on that question here.
Thank you.
No worries. Amanda, your question, just to answer that, is national landscape boundaries. Do you mean like the Peak District Authority and people like that? Is that who you mean by national landscape? If you're able to unmute yourself, that'd be great. But if not.
Okay, finally. Some people would be pleased to hear that I couldn't unmute myself before, but national landscapes, as in what used to be called areas of outstanding natural beauty. Here in the Cotswolds, we've got Cotswold National Landscape that involves 6 counties and huge number of districts, and we're doing a lot of work to sort of scorecard and a variety of other ways that we've analysed and that we're working towards delivering. But it's all through our partner councils, obviously. So I just wondered whether it was possible to do the data collection and the analysis for the national landscape geography as a total.
Oh, I see.
It's like a higher level rather than when you zoom in. So you'd have a county score, I presume, and then you zoom in down to the district one. I'm wondering whether you can zoom up to be sort of supra, whatever the word is, combining 6 counties.
So what you can do, we don't have it for national landscape, but you can filter by region. So that might, like Cotswolds, is that southwest or southeast?
Well, that's the problem, is it spans Oxfordshire, Gloucestershire, Warwickshire, Worcestershire, Somerset, Dorset. We've got put in all sorts. So
Yeah,
we're southwest, southeast, and
yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit of West Midlands, I would believe.
Yeah. So we don't provide that currently at the moment, but it's, yeah, I forgot to include this. You can filter by different types of councils here. We haven't got national landscape boundaries, but obviously if you know the authorities that are there, you can do it, but filter by that. But yeah, if you do want to filter by region, we've got that available, as well as population, the index of multiple deprivation, political control as of June, and how urban rural they are. But yeah, we don't do something for the kind of national landscapes. Yeah, we just do it by region.
Are we able to combine districts? So if we selected 6 or 8 of them or 20 of them, could we then look at what the combined best and worst was, or
Like the average score?
or...
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what type of average it would be, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you're able to, like, all of the information is publicly available. So if you wanted to like search for each district council, like Cotswolds, you could just click on it and find the score. And then, as I said, if you click through to the council, you can then compare with different councils. So you could add in, I can't think of the neighbour of Cotswold at the moment, but you could add in someone like Oxford.
West Oxfordshire.
Yeah, West Oxfordshire, there you go. You could add in West Oxfordshire, and then you could add it and compare and get their total scores like this. But it'd be a bit of a manual exercise if you want to do it across all of the councils that are in that national landscape boundary. The other way, obviously, as I mentioned, you can purchase the data if you wanted to have it in a spreadsheet format, which I mentioned. So that's the only thing we charge for. And then you'd be able to, obviously, in a spreadsheet, you'd be able to filter by all the council names in those areas and just have it all as one. So that might make it easier, but that's one thing we charge for. But if you wanted to do it manual, you just do it via the website like this, if that makes sense.
That's great. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks for your question.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. I think, well, I put my hand up to enter the queue. I think it was Gary and then me and then Elined, but we've got 10 minutes left. So I think we're going to be try and be succinct with our questions. So we'll go Gary and then Elined and then perhaps me after.
Yeah, thanks, Jules. Yeah, thanks, Isaac, for the presentation. So the question I have when I look at all of this is, where's this actually coming from? Why are you actually doing this? Why are you evaluating councils? Where did this requirement come from?
Yeah, so we are doing this because, kind of, as I mentioned at the start, we believe that we believe that councils have a big impact on emissions. So the Climate Change Committee says that councils have kind of power or influence over 1/3 of emissions in their area, with some people actually putting that far higher. So number one, we believe councils are important to meet our net zero targets. We believe that data, like good solid data and public accountability, is what's going to drive forward local climate action. We know that there was, a lot of kind of public accountability and campaigns at the local level. We know there's lots of campaigners and residents involved in pushing their councils to go further. But one of the most important things when you're a campaigner, and I have done some campaigning myself at the local level, is if you're able to provide a comparison to your council to say, yeah, understand that, we haven't done this currently, but this council over here has done it and they're just like you, so why can't we do it? It's one of the most effective campaigning tools. And yeah, so the scorecards are there to provide that kind of comparison. And just to give the final thing is, there are loads of organisations that already assess and analyse the national government. There was no current comparison about councils. And so while there are lots of, and we do campaign on further support for local climate action and council climate action, and we do understand that the national government holds the most levers and powers, there are already dozens of organisations that assess them, like Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, and sue them quite regularly on their legal duties and what they should be doing better. And so we thought we'd step in to assess councils.
Okay, so the question was like, but where did the idea come from? I mean, not like what was the reason for doing it. It's like, why has your organisation decided to do it? Who's decided that that's what your organisation is going to do, and who's going to pay? Who's paying you to do it?
So So I guess the reason for why doing it is kind of why we decided, why we thought it was important is why we're then doing it. We are funded through donations, partly. We are funded through charitable grants. We're a small nonprofit, and we're funded through some sales we make, but by doing data collection or people buying the data in spreadsheet format. So that's our three main funding sources. The decision was made by us, by Climate Action UK. We thought it was important to provide that comparison between councils because of the reasons I just explained, and so we made that decision to do it.
So why don't you do scorecards for the organisations that are actually responsible for climate change?
Because we believe councils do have, as I said, they do have a big impact on the emissions in their area. So they have power and influence over a third of emissions in their area. When you mean the organisations responsible, you mean like the people like the fossil fuel companies and banks?
Yeah, the big organisations that are actually...
Well, there's already people that do that. We don't want to replicate analysis. So, you know, there's people that score banks on their climate action. There's people that rate and assess the big companies. There's people that obviously are doing loads of campaigning around the fossil fuel companies and what they're doing or not doing in the transition. So, you know, it's important not to replicate work. So we've decided to focus on councils.
Okay.
Thanks for your questions, Gary. Really, really interesting. I mentioned Kevin, who kind of founded Climate Emergency UK, and I think it was mostly volunteer driven at the start.
Yeah.
With no funding, it was kind of, it's kind of a volunteer effort. In terms of, well, our respective representatives have declared an emergency. Let's track how they're doing.
Yeah,
I think there's the general premise. So really fascinating there. Eleanor, you put a question in the chat, and I was wondering if you wanted to ask that yourself. Oh, you're just on mute at the moment.
Yes, as we were running short of time, I put it in the chat. Yes, I just wondered if any other area on this call is facing what West Northants Council are a similar situation as we're facing in West Northants, where the council, which went reform in May, is it's voting tonight to abandon the net zero targets.
Yes, so I've just linked a Guardian article which we worked over the weekend to kind of cover this story. So Durham is voting right now to rescind their climate emergency declaration, which is obviously a shame. And then and West Northamptonshire, and I believe Kent has mentioned about cutting some of the action that they're taking. The thing is with these headlines, and just to talk a little bit about it, that councils are doing, it's really interesting. West Northamptonshire in particular, in their report where they say, you know, we're going to get rid of these net zero targets, they actually say we're going to kind of continue with the sustainability project because it has been shown to have real benefits for residents and businesses. And so one of the things we really wanted to highlight, is that they, you know, the headline of scrapping the targets is what's going to be like, oh, we've scrapped our targets, like look how we've like gone anti-net zero. But what will be really interesting for local campaigners and people like yourself and in the people in the area is to understand whether that leads to a change in action. And obviously the scorecards will hopefully track that in 2027 as well. Because what I don't understand is that West Northamptonshire said, yeah, we're going to scrap the targets, but we're going to keep doing the action because it's shown to have benefit. And it's like, well, actually, what does it mean? And, you know, the Durham one is like, we'll rescind the climate emergency declaration, which, you know, is like kind of unbelievable because obviously it is an emergency. But what does it mean? Like, if you just scrap the declaration, sure, but does that mean you're going to take less action? That would be kind of what you presume. But it might be because in the debate, I was trying to cover some of the debate because there's a local journalist who's like live tweeting it. One of them said, we're anti-net zero, but we're not anti-clean energy. And I was like, well, that's great. If you're going to like help support planning applications for renewable energy in County Durham and help residents get like solar panels on their retrofit solar panels onto their homes or all this stuff, or get clean energy across the area. Like, so I don't understand if they're the headlines are distinct a little bit from what people are actually doing. So it's going to be like, it's going to be difficult, but hopefully worthwhile to kind of actually track what action does change for those particular areas which are looking to roll back some of their big headline commitments, but I don't know what they're actually going to be doing on action. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to track some of that going
Yeah,
forward.
so you'll be tracking now for the next year, is it?
When we do the next scorecards in 2027, we'll be scoring, going through the marking process in some time, depending around late 2026 to early 2027. So some of those changes may have come through already, or some of them may not. It's just really difficult to know, because at the moment it seems like some of those politicians are seeking headlines rather than actually doing anything substantial. Yeah, to put it bluntly.
Wow, it's going to be really interesting to see them updated in 2027, perhaps when some of reform's actual actions and policies have taken effect, and we can
absolutely.
And we can see whether those respective councils are indeed moving up and down. As many of us know, it's much harder to be in power than outside of power asking questions. So it'll be really, really interesting to see. While we don't have that many reform councillors in East Anglia yet, there is an upswell in support, not least because we're having massive nationally significant infrastructure projects, battery storage, solar farms, pylons, and connectivity from offshore wind coming through East Anglia, which has provoked a lot of local objections one way and another, which people say they might hold their nose and vote reform. Whether or not they can actually then influence that locally, based on the fact that the decisions are often made nationally and are nationally significant projects, has yet to be seen. But certainly very valuable and interesting information, Isaac. Thank you very much for
no worries.
Being able to hold our councils to account effectively, our representatives. And building on, I'm kind of keen to build on, Gary's questions and Katie's questions. I'm interested in the possibility for councils like Forest of Dean, where you might have a better connection now, self-reporting. I'm also into the 15 ways to improve your council document. Number 3, I'm particularly interested in further discussion about how we involve residents and stakeholders. And that's particularly relevant to us as the Great Collaboration. And myself, I run Community Climate Action. So we help communities write and then enact their community climate action plan. So, and I know other people on this call, Tristram from Parish Online and others that we're in discussion with, we're looking at lots of citizen science and self-reporting on targets in relation to things like housing stock, energy use, substation capacity, all of that kind of thing. So it kind of dovetails with the work that you're doing. Very interested in the decision-making tool used by Chesterfield. I'd love to find out more about that and look at the veracity and otherwise, because we really need to take climate into consideration when making our decisions. And as parish councils, we have a biodiversity duty that mandates a statutory duty that we take biodiversity into consideration when making our decisions. And just to round off, one thing I'm curious about is emergency planning. I'm not sure that that's on the scoring, but each council has a resilience forum and invariably emergency plan, and our emergency plans as town and parish councillors should dovetail with that overarching emergency plan and that community risk register. So I'm just going to end on the question: might you consider including emergency planning in your scoring?
Potentially it would have to be yes, but we would have to find a way, because if what we try to do is not, if every council is meant to have an emergency plan, we and it's like a legal duty to have it, we try not to assess a question where it's a specific like legal duty to have a certain thing, because every council just should have one anyway. But if there's particular aspects of emergency plans where they're like falling down, like say they're mostly based, I imagine the UK, they're going to be mostly based around flood risk. But if there's other things, like do they take into account that things that could improve those emergency plans, that is something that we could potentially look at. But
I think predominantly my question is specifically around climate related risks. And often emergency plans aren't updated frequently enough to keep change with the change in our extreme weather. So the likelihood of flooding is really important. But wrapped up within that, and I know this because we're doing some emergency planning work, we've done some with my council and others, but wrapped up within that is the risk of wildfires, the prevalence of disease or heat impacts, cool spaces, the amount of excess deaths, and where our emergency services might be otherwise engaged rather than, they might be policing food riots or water riots rather than policing burglaries and violent crime. That kind of thing. So we as Community Climate Action, we recently received some funding from Sussex Resilience Forum to look at food resilience and that kind of thing. So as well as flooding, the impact of that is perhaps access to clean water and food based on a just-in-time supply system. And often emergency plans don't take those climate risks into consideration and are often not updated frequently enough. So that's something we could perhaps have a conversation about, is how to assess. It's a statutory duty, so everyone will have one. But the relevance of that, or the veracity of it in relation to climate risks is something that could perhaps be measured.
Yeah. And we have that thing about the corporate risk register, whether it has like climate risks included in the corporate risk register. But yes, if there's be open to we're always open to suggestions for new questions. We just have to understand that we try not to add many new questions because we're already covering about 90 in total. So we don't want to continue to expand it and make it more and more difficult for ourselves. But yeah, if there's particular questions where we think there's been changes or things that we should look at, then we're interested in like reviewing it and understanding whether we should make that change. Sure.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thanks, Isaac. And I think it's a very important and valuable tool to monitor and assess how well our respective councils are doing, where we might be able to apply pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, as I said. So yeah, we're really grateful. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for attending. Any final comments from everyone before we sign off? No, I think that might be it. So, or
Just
Eleanor?
thank you.
Yeah, great.
Thanks a lot. Really good.
Yeah, very grateful, Isaac, and thanks very much, and fabulous to see the progress.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, everyone.
We look forward to collaboration and staying in touch.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.